Good evening, everybody. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. It's 6:30 p.m., Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020, and we're going to say the pledge. If you'd stand and join us, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Randy, roll call, please.
Trustee LaRue?
Here.
Trustee Marks?
Present.
Trustee Everson?
Here.
Trustee Wiegand?
Here.
Treasurer Johnson?
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, our legal counsel Roger Zappa, and Superintendent of Public Works John Kangas is here.
Great, thank you. Thanks for joining us, folks. We are up to public comment. If anybody'd like to address the board before we get started, you're welcome to come up to the podium. Name and address, please.
Hello, Paul Marin,
for
274
coming, Paul.
Eagles Nest Road here in the township. And I'm here as I usually am whenever the library is on the agenda. And I am here to, on behalf of my wife and me, to ask that you renew the contract with the library, that you do it for longer than a year, mainly because I'm lazy. I wouldn't have to come back every year if we do this every year. But, you know, my understanding is that all of you were elected to follow the wishes of your constituents. And every time that the library millage has been on the ballot, it has passed by a vote of about 70% in favor and 30% opposed. And I don't think you can get a stronger directive than that. And if you are here truly to follow the wishes of your constituents, you will do the right thing with respect to the library. So I hope you do. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Anybody else wish to address the board?
Bill Davis, 3 Northwood Lane, and I just want to reiterate Paul's comments that I urge you to renew the millage request and the contract with the library. It's provided excellent service to the Marquette Township residents for tens of years and will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Anybody else wish to address the board? Mary? Okay, that's fine, thank you. Any board member comment in relation to what we just heard? Oh, okay, we will continue. Tonight's, pardon me, tonight's consent agenda consists of approval of the regular board meeting minutes of February 8th and a work session from February 25th. Bills payable in the amount of $133,281.78. Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority packet for February 19th. And the Marquette County Region rallies that'll be held. You've got an insert in your packet for that. They're working on the master plan for the next 20 years. And correspondence, we have a nice thank you letter from the UP 200 for our support. And I put in some MTA scholarship information for any of our young people who'd like to do any future leader training and education in college. There's a $1,000 scholarship you can apply for from the Michigan Township Association. Go ahead, John.
Move to concur with the consent agenda.
Or
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And I just need approval of the rest of the agenda unless we have any changes.
I move to accept the regular agenda as presented.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I'm not aware of any conflicts of interest with tonight's agenda. Next up is Board Education and Privilege comment. And Peter White, Director Andrea Ingmeyer, is asked to speak to us about the upcoming millage. So if you want to come up to the podium. Always a pleasure to have you, Andrea.
It's always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me in. In your packet is a letter from the library requesting that the Township Board place the library millage on the ballot in 2020. doesn't matter to us. If you want to go with August, November, we're game. We have heard from West Branch Township, and they are putting us on the November ballot. So I guess my preference at this point would be November, so we're doing it all at the same time. We are up for renewal in all 5 of our townships. So Chocolate, Sands, Scandia, West Branch, and Marquette Township. Does anybody have any questions for me regarding the library contract or the millage request?
Anybody?
I will say most of our townships have put us on for 4 years. I know Marquette Township has preferred to do a 2-year renewal in the past. If the board would consider 4 years, I think it would be a good use of all of our time. But again, that's up to your discretion, so we appreciate any consideration you would give us.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah.
What's an annual household membership, for the library, for just any old household that's not in the tax?
So the cost for a card in an unserved area is $175.
For the whole family?
That is a family fee, yes. I think per person it's $125.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thanks. We'll talk about this shortly.
Thank you.
Thanks. Superintendent Kangas is here with an update. We had asked him for a status report on the water asset project that he's been working on.
Good evening. I don't know that I can be that quick. Is 2 hours okay?
Sure, go for it.
11 slides, I'll try to be done in 10 minutes or less.
The Mike Springer School of PowerPoints, right?
Sure. First thing I have to figure out is how to work the clicker, and I've got it. All right. So we want to talk about the water asset management plan, which was completed and submitted, I believe it was the end of October. Also approved by the DEQ. I've got a brief summary of the data, the ratings, age, condition, criticality, reliability study recommendations, which roll into the CIP, and then next steps. So this is the official letter we received in January from Eagle. It shows that they hereby approve the set of requirements that are enacted in the law. That's the big news. We met our requirement. On to the data. I think everyone knows we have 2 water supplies, one being from the city, one being our well field. That leads to 4 pressure districts. In that well field, we have 5 wells, but 40 unique assets that we're paying attention to. We have 2 booster stations at Cox and Northwoods. Those also have, between the 2 of them, 40 unique assets. And when I say unique assets, it's everything from valves to header pipes, controls. We're tracking that many individual items in those locations. We have 3 storage tanks totaling just over 1.5 million gallons worth of water stored if we're at capacity. 325 water main segments. As I was preparing this, I need to tell you that I started questioning some of the data. And the 325 segments may not mean much to you, but when I calculated it, it totaled up to about 10 miles of water main. That number seemed really low. And in the process of working on one of the next steps, which I'll talk about in a little bit, Stantec gave me some of their summary of our water system, and it's more like 34 miles. So we've got some work to do figuring out where all of our data might be. And let me just qualify that by saying when I came here, we had basically a spreadsheet, which I believe was probably exported from our GIS. And that's what we used to go through all of the rankings. I'm wondering if maybe we lost a couple of sheets along the way. I don't know for sure, but that's one of the things that we have to work on to figure out whether or not we're working with a full deck of cards, so to speak. Onto the mainline valves, I think we're actually closer to about 290. We don't have all of the record data for the reconstruction of the water main on the highway from last year yet. We'll probably get that sometime upon completion of the project this year. So I think 288 is what we currently have in our GIS, so we'll probably bump up a little bit due to additional valves being installed. And then the fire hydrants, 250 is actually significantly lower than what we actually have based on the conversations I had in the last week or two. It's more like 395, and it may even be closer to 400. So this just goes to show you that you can submit all the information, but you're not done. You have to immediately start all over again. 1,300 customer meters, I think that number is pretty accurate, plus or minus a couple, because I got that information right from Brenda as I was preparing the presentation. And then those 7 master meters, there's actually 5 that are township owned. We actually have 2 city master meters in our data set that we're likely going to remove because we're not responsible for those, and we need to focus on what we have. But between those 8 PRVs and 5 master meter pits, that's over 100 unique assets, which is a lot of information to pay attention to. This is how we rated everything, and this is straight from the, I guess it was DEQ at the time, Eagles format. So starting with condition, it's a little bit different than road ratings. Road ratings go from 1 to 10 on the PACER scale, 10 being a brand new road. Here, a rating of 1 is the best rating you can get. So under condition, it's newer excellent condition for a 1, which would be a 10 on a road. The asset being completely unserviceable being a 5, and you should be happy to know we don't have any of those in our system, or we would be working to correct that. So then probability of failure and consequence of failure, that leads to your criticality. You take those 2 scores, multiply them together. And what we really look for, or what I've been looking for, is anything over a score of basically a 9, which is your average score for probability and consequence. So if you get to a probability of 4, which means it will occur several times in the lifetime, that's something you have to keep an eye on, because you should be doing whatever you can to get the preventive maintenance as high of a level as you can. Or if you get into a major disruption as a consequence, you want to minimize the risk of that. So that would equate to a criticality, if it's a 3 and a 4, of a 12. So on to the age, which really leads to condition, but I think everyone knows our system is pretty new compared to a lot of systems. So we have 170 assets with 5 or less years of remaining life. Those are primarily associated with pumping and control. So they already have the shortest life from the day they're installed. Our first order of operation is to go back through and verify all of the information. And by the way, all of those assets were all analyzed by Scott Sweener at UP Engineers, who was a former DEQ region engineer for water systems. So I'm tending to believe that most of the information he provided is accurate. We just have to determine whether or not, just like the age of our pipes, we've decided 75 years is our design life. It is certainly possible that some of those we could increase their life expectancy just based on how long they are actually lasting. And if we can do some preventative maintenance to almost renew it, we'll certainly do that. So our plan is to revisit all of those items with 5 years or less of their expected life remaining. The good news is most of those are rated in a good condition, which you'll see in a little bit. 105 assets with 6 to 10 years of life remaining, and those are all in good or better condition. So we're in pretty good shape there. Hydrants and valves are primarily what fall into that category, because they have the next shortest life expectancy. Condition, almost 97% good or better. That's really the best news that I can give you today, and that's 2,400, almost 2,400 assets in our total database, not knowing if the database was complete. So 3% are in fair condition, and those will be maintained through preventative maintenance and minor repairs as needed. And then less less than 0.5%, 0.2%, in poor condition. That's 1 fire hydrant, 1 mainline valve, 1 check valve, and 2 PRV vaults. The PRV vaults in particular would be of the most concern because the estimated cost to replace them and everything that's in them, if you have to, would be about $100,000 a piece. I think if we can take a closer look at them, we might be able to do some preventive maintenance to those and reduce the cost significantly. Whether it's $5,000, $20,000, I won't be able to tell you, but if it's a matter of concrete cracking and sealing it back up with an epoxy coating, I think it would be probably a very quick and affordable fix for us. The check valve and the mainline valve, I think those are both in one of those PRV vaults, but they would be pretty easy to fix or replace in that case. And then a fire hydrant replacement is actually pretty easy too. We're talking with the dig and replacement less than $5,000 fairly easily. So criticality, now we're getting into the minutia. We have 1 fire hydrant in Lost Creek with a criticality of 16. And that's based, we have a few other hydrants that are higher too, just because without that hydrant being available to the fire department, the next one available makes fighting the fire that much more difficult. So, but that fire hydrant's in good condition currently. So we just have to make sure that we maintain that 1 hydrant in good condition. There's other issues we have to worry about when it comes to hydrants too, and that's our pressure districts. If we're getting close, I opened my mouth. Sorry. If the fire hydrant is too close to a pressure district boundary and a PRV is supposed to kick in when it reaches a certain level, this has actually happened on South Vandenboom Road where I think it was a silo fire this past winter or earlier this winter. If you're drawing water just below the amount that opens up the PRV, your fire flows will be significantly worse because you're not kicking in the other pressure district to help you there. So we do have to keep an eye on those as well. The chemical injection header in our well house is the other item that ranks above a 12 in our entire system. And the reason there is because the chemicals themselves can degrade that pipe more rapidly than treated water will because of the high concentration of the chemicals. It's still in good condition. It was installed in 2005, so we're okay there, and it's a highly visible spot somewhere we go every day, so we can keep an eye on that pretty easily. We have numerous pumps, valves, and hydrants with a criticality of 12. That's that combination 3, 4, one way or the other. 1 hydrant and 2 valves, and those were mentioned previously under the condition that are in need of repair and or replacement. So anything with a criticality of 9 or less, we will keep an eye on to make sure they don't increase for whatever reason, their criticality score. But we're in pretty good shape now, and as long as we continue to maintain our system the way we're supposed to, they won't increase beyond a 9. All right, on to the recommendations from the reliability study. I highlighted the things that I saw in that one-page recommendation in the 2013 study that I felt applied to our capital improvement plan, which you will see on the next slide. Address the low available fire flow in the Cox district. That's primarily due to 6-inch diameter water mains. And that's not unusual with water systems. Downtown Ishpeming had the exact same thing. That being said, with good pressures, you can still get good fire flows. It's just you have to maintain good pressure. Looping dead-end water mains, that's kind of a challenge in Trowbridge due to the topography, the rocks, wet soils. So that will be limited in how much we can ever accomplish there, whether it's in the next 5 or 20 or 100 years. Eventually the technology will get better, but I don't know that we will see significant improvement when it comes to additional looping in Trowbridge in particular. So upgrading the 6- and 8-inch water mains, Everyone will probably recall the first phase of Ontario, the water main size was increased, and I think that was to it's either 10 or 12. The project was more before my time, but I should have verified that. The idea is to get some main loops that will get the water to the various neighborhoods quicker. Then bring new sources of water supply online. That's your Morgan Meadows project, which was tabled prior to my time, and then along with investigating the other groundwater sources, which is also part of that project. So on to the next page, capital improvement plan. The top half of that should look pretty familiar. It basically came from the budget work sessions we had last fall, late last year. There really isn't anything there that changed other than the format of the spreadsheet. Thanks, Randy. That's set up in DEQ or / Eagles tool. That basically assumes that you're starting to fund those projects this year as opposed to maybe 2 years ago. So it shows you that you need $98,333 in the first year, when some of that may already be sitting in the bank waiting for the project to happen. Down to the bottom, the 20-year CIP, that is a conglomeration of all of the projects that Kirk and I could come up with that weren't maintenance projects that needed to be at least on everyone's radar in the event we ever have to plan for them. The completion date, those can change like the wind. 12-inch, phase 2 actually of Ontario Street, if it were to happen, we would have to start working on that right now because the project is happening next year. So that's something that we should consider. Do we want to continue that, at least get the 12-inch water main to Fair Avenue, or extend it to the limits of phase 2, which I think the reliability study was suggesting we should do, so that we get that 12-inch artery all the way down to Wright Street. Of course, the specific budgeting for that we would have to make sure we can handle that. And of course, we'd have to do some cost verification, which likely means getting a consultant on board to help with the design and all that good stuff. So that's probably another discussion we have to have beyond this evening. Morgan Meadows, the price on that one too might only cover half of that project. I have to do some more research in the files to see what we had on there. But that comes out to almost $600,000 worth of savings every year to complete those projects according to the schedule without borrowing money. So that's really what that's saying. Next steps. First things first, we need to verify all the questionable data, because if you put garbage in, you get garbage out, and we need to verify that we're not putting garbage in. I know a lot of the information that's in there is good and verifiable. The ones that raise question marks, I've already created a separate spreadsheet with all those question marks highlighted yellow. We can go through each one as the weather gets cooperative and update this so that by the end of this year, we should have gone through the whole process again. We need to update that asset inventory and the rankings as a result of our field verifications. We need to consider collaborating with Stantec to create the AMSET tool for our water asset management plan the way we did for our wastewater asset management plan. And I'm working on the final scope for that proposal with them currently. I'm hoping to have a conference call with them sometime this week. They did send me a draft scope, and I think the scope actually is very good in that it also would update the 2013 reliability study that's now outdated, of course. Those should be updated every 5 years. We're going on 8 years old. Update the CIP as a result of that. So everything that's in the CIP that you saw on the screen tonight and in your handout would be something that ends up being much sharper than what I provided to you, because we'll have another set of skilled eyes that look at all of our information. And the tool that they use actually spits a lot of that out too. So then as we get the CIP finalized, we review our rate structure and determine whether or not we're going to adjust the rates to properly fund the CIP, whatever that ends up being. As you see it in here, we would probably have to adjust the rates if we didn't intend to borrow money. And I don't know what that equates to per 1,000. I think there's too many question marks in the information I provided you to give you what I would think is a solid number. So I don't like to give you too many of those question marks, but those are the facts as I have them in front of you today.
Questions for John? Just Dave. Go ahead.
I'm surprised to see the 75-year life expectancy still in there. That when we put that number together, that was something I threw out there based on some online research, and it was totally put in there to raise a question about why we were using a 50-year depreciation schedule.
You want my opinion? I agree with you. With modern pipe materials, 100 years is probably more accurate.
Well, and that's what.
But 75 is
actually come up.
very conservative
They come up with
from that
108,
perspective.
Depending on the alkalinity of the soil.
Yeah, I think 75 years is perfectly fine. Now, one of the things we have to watch for is a lot of these tools want you to put the life remaining, but it varies depending on what segment of the system you're on. So if you put the life expectancy in there and then start to work it backwards with each iteration, the numbers will get sharper and sharper as we go. And that's what my goal is. By the second iteration, we will have much better numbers. And I think with that AMSAT tool, you will see a lot of that come out.
I'm just surprised, I guess, that there's not, industry-wide, there's not better numbers out there, because certainly somebody ran across this problem before.
I think the numbers are actually out there, and if you have a system as new as ours where it's all ductile iron or high-density polyethylene pipe, you won't find too many people disagreeing with that 75 unless they are on the far fringe of conservative planners, so to speak.
Hopefully you can see my point. If in fact it's not 75 and it's something more like 90 for our type of soil, that changes how much money we need to be putting away every year to cover the replacement.
It should reduce it significantly because you have that many more years to compound your investment, right, your financial investment, and you have more years to save. So
is that something we're just going to fine tune based on our experience, or are we still looking for a good number out there? Because
I think 75 is a perfect spot to
I just
start
pulled that number out of the
based
air.
on our system. It's a good number. I really think that's a good number for planning purposes. Can we have that hard discussion with more experts in the room on that? Stantec, in this example, I think is the way to go, but we don't necessarily have to go that way. We can have that discussion and see if we can tighten it up some more.
Yeah, I guess it surprised me that there's not enough log data out there on the life of in-ground infrastructure based on the pipe type and that type of stuff. I'm just surprised that municipalities haven't logged that information so that you can just sit there and look at it and tell what a good number is. Because obviously you don't want to take it to 100 years if it's going to fail at 99. You want something with a little cushion in there. But
I think the biggest issue is ductile iron pipe has not been around long enough to know for sure if it'll give you a good average 100 years or not. I think the ductile iron change from cast iron might have started in the 50s, somewhere on there, maybe a little
do
later.
we have all ductile iron, or do we have some cast?
All ductile iron now. The two segments that we had that were cast were originally constructed as part of the city system, and then they were since turned over to us. That was on Fair and Grove. Both of those segments have been replaced with ductile iron.
Okay.
Pete?
I just think 75 is a good number, and within the next 5-10 years, I think researching that is going to give us a better idea, and then we can always adjust our numbers and what we're doing for it and put it away. As long as we start putting something away and going that way, using 75, it might not be 75, it might be 50, you know, whatever, how they come up with it, but.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is too, we have to remember that we've already used up some of that life, right? And some of the spreadsheets aren't set up to take that into account. So we have to fine tune all that as we go.
That duck line, it hasn't been, you know, how many years have we been using it since it came out, so there's kind of learning curve there also.
Correct?
Ernie?
We're talking about the Ontario Street. I think that pertains to when the county gets money from the federal government as to when they can start. Last I heard was maybe 2 or 3 years. Who knows for sure? Or not.
My understanding is the county is preparing plans to do the second phase in 2021, meaning they will be getting the next round of small urban funds for the Marquette small urban area.
So that means we need to look at putting some money aside more than we have right now to address that.
Yeah, you know, there is money in the fund for water main replacement. I don't know that there's ever been much of a discussion about, are you replacing it due to age or due to system reliability or any of those kinds of things. That's a discussion that I really think we need to have sooner than later, so that if we are going to go forward with upgrading the water main to a 12-inch main on that section, that we get a consultant on board quickly to have the design ready to put in the bid documents.
Dave, go ahead.
It seems to me the original discussion on the 12-inch main was because that was the then DEQ's new standard for that district, as opposed to, I think there was 8-inch in there now.
Well, that's before my time here.
Oh,
My standard for water main is a minimum 8-inch diameter for proper fire flow. But you also have to feed those 8s with 10s and 12s. 12 being your best bet because it gives you your best opportunity for expansion if you ever need to in any direction beyond your current.
Obviously, there's not a lot of expansion that's going to go on in Trowbridge.
Correct.
But what would be nice to know when you start figuring if you're going to spend several $100,000 putting a 12-inch main in is how would you expect that to change the fire flow and the problem areas? Would you expect it to go up by 5 PSI or 10 PSI? What would you expect it to be?
It would have to be modeled. That takes a little bit more complex analysis than my head is capable of. Putting it into HydroCAD is the way you do it. You take actual fire flows based on your fire model or your system model that's in the software, and then you change that segment of pipe out to a 12-inch, and it will give you fairly realistic, plus or minus, results. Part of what we're proposing to do with Stantec is to rerun the model based on current fire flows. And they could probably get that part done fairly quickly to determine whether or not it makes sense to spend that kind of money.
Well, yeah, that's what my question was, before we decide to go out and spend that kind of money just to bring it up to 12-inch mains, and I realize you didn't have anything to do with this, but the only explanation the board got for 12-inch mains was because that was the new DEQ standard. That's not a good reason to spend that kind of money on mains if that's the only reason you're doing it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to justify that.
If the main is going to change the fire flow in gallons per minute or wherever you want to measure it on the ones, and you already have areas that are low on fire flow, that you've already earmarked as low on fire flow. So it's a matter of when the board decides if they want to spend that money or not, it's a matter of having a number there that this is what the fire flow is now, and if we take it to 12-inch mains, this is what the fire flow in that same station will be then. I mean, it's kind of a cost-benefit thing. There's got to be some reason you want to do that besides meeting a new standard.
I agree. And I think having this discussion today really helps in the conference call I'm going to have with Stantec and finding out from them whether or not we could do that analysis quickly enough to give you much better information in deciding if we replace the water main with Phase 2 of Ontario.
Do I remember that 75-year number? Because it's partially dependent on the alkalinity or whatever's in the soil, that the township has different? It could be 60 years on this road and 70 in this section, or?
It's possible that some of our soils are more, I think it's actually acidic soils, which are your sandy, where you find a lot of evergreens growing. But even then, if the soils are relatively dry around the pipe most of the time, the soil won't have that much of an impact if it's a relatively clean sand. So I'm not aware of any significant soil issues. The more concerns we have are if we have a pipe failure along US 41 in areas where it's deep, and that's happened one time in the past that the crew at Public Works remembers. The amount of effort to get to it is the challenge along a busy commercial corridor. So those, I think, are the more critical concerns. We just can't predict when the next main break will happen on ductile iron pipe because we have so few currently.
So we had said before, too, that we need to have, I recommended we had conversations this year prior to the budget session, so we don't dump all this information in a bunch of meetings at the end of the year. So as soon as you have, we're happy to, I'm speaking for us, we're happy to have, short little snippet meetings as things come up. If you can put 2 or 3 items together and we can spend an hour or so.
Sure.
So I would think that would help you too as your year progresses.
Certainly.
To stay up on it.
I would agree, and my hope is the proposal from Stantec to help us through some of these next steps will be ready by your next meeting, so done by next Wednesday, I guess, so that we can take that next step. And part of the conversation I have with them is get the system modeling done for Phase 2 of Ontario to determine whether or not it makes sense. Maybe it only makes sense to go to fair and then we turn down fair. I don't know that, because the lower the elevation, the higher the pressure will be. Maybe it makes sense to do that, but I can't make that decision without the modeling, or recommendation for that matter.
Anything else for John? Great, good information.
Good report.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, next up is community linkage. I have a bunch of stuff to share. Does anybody have anything that they want to let me know or us know? We do need another planning commissioner. We had one of the commissioners retire before the term was up, so I want to make sure the public is aware. If there's somebody out there that would like to join us twice a month, it's not too bad meeting-wise. Sometimes they don't even have to as the holidays approach, but it's actually to finish a term, so it's not a full 4-year, it's only 3 years. So in your travels, if you find somebody that you think might like to be involved, have them give us a phone call, any one of us, or the planner, or the chair of the planning commission, or me, or somebody. So the term would end December of 2022. So I just wanted to bring that up for you. You did see some information in the packet about the Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority. I did give you copies of an email too, that I had asked some questions on their last packet. I'm not real sure. I don't know, Randy, you also had a conversation with a couple people this week, if you want to share those, or I'm not sure where they're going to go with raising tipping fees again, if they can't seem to find the money. They've made some purchases that I don't necessarily agree with, the way they've done them, and this, I don't know, this new plan of what they're doing with the director's evaluations and contract, and I'm just not happy with the way it's going. Did you want to add anything, Randy?
Well, what Supervisor Durant was referring to is I did bump into the county administrator, and we had a discussion regarding the article that was on the front page of Saturday's paper about the Solid Waste Authority answering the community's questions. Well, he didn't answer any questions. Didn't address any of the questions that we raised regarding their financial plan, regarding their any commitments that they have for their product, and what they would be doing if they were not successful in what their plan is. Simple answer was shift it to the townships and the other constituent communities, raise tipping fees and do the community agreements. And I informed the county administrator that we would not be doing either of those. You know, it's the same old thing. We keep asking for the same thing, a business plan, and we never see one.
They just kind of keep finding grants and going after them,
Right.
and it's just
Without any kind of a plan
incremental.
to pay them back other than wishes and hopes.
But they're proceeding with their plan. I totally agree with the 906 plan that they're trying to do, recycle 906. It's excellent. It's just they need to come up with exactly how they're going to pay for it first, and they're not doing that. It's kind of like incremental guessing.
Right.
How they do it. We talked a couple times too about your tax bills. For those people who have mortgages and escrow, they are not seeing their tax bills, and we have items, as we're going to talk later, on the ballots, and most people don't know what their taxes go for. I've got the assessor's going to put some information together we can put in our next packet probably to show where your tax dollars go. We've said before we only have 4.9 some mills for our operations. We've got the road millage and a couple of fire and equipment, and the rest of it is everybody else, the rest of the county. On my tax bill, because it's business, it's rather extensive because I don't have a residence exemption, so I have to pay the 18 mills for the school. So just the county itself, my bill's $1,400 for that, $13,000 for the school, and $6,000 for the township, which is 25% or 28% of the bill, and then the Heritage Trail falls in there. The library, mine's like $500. It's not too bad, but so what I just want to encourage you to do is get a copy of your tax bill. If you don't see it, you can call us. You can call the county. The assessor says that we send those. We can send tax bills out. It's not a problem. I shouldn't say tax bill, but a copy of your bill, just so you can see where all of the millage items go. So that when you vote as an educated person. That's important. However you support whatever, it doesn't make any difference. Just so you're well informed. Go ahead, Ernie.
Following up what the manager said at the last meeting, that, and this is, the township can only levy 10 mills, period. They can't go any higher than that. Right now, we're probably about 9.6, 9.7 mills. That's the maximum. We can't go any higher. So when the residents look at trying to add something and want us to change something, we are under the gun. We can't do it unless we drop something else out. So that's where we stand at this point in time. So we can't do anything different. So we have everything pretty well allocated at this point in time, and it's been through the voters of the people. So we're pretty well tied in to what we have in millage. So we have very little left to do. So we're trying to get that out to the public so they know where we stand at all this time.
And we're going to be doing some strategic planning. We'll have some open meetings so the residents can come on and tell us. A bunch of years ago, we did this, and they were all about roads. They said roads, roads, roads. That was the number one thing. We did a survey. Roads was it. So we did a millage. That's what they wanted. They voted for that. We fixed the roads, and we'll talk more about this year's project too. So Ernie's right. We want to do what everybody's telling us. We just want everybody to be educated and make sure they know what they want to support. That's just so important. Next thing is I've got, oh, Pete, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go back on community linkage.
Yeah,
All right.
go ahead.
I wish I'd bring up every meeting that we're looking for committee members, because the way our system is, the whole board cleans, they clean house at one time. And I wish we'd change that, but we can't right now. But you're gonna need road, recreation, and the more we talk about it, more people are getting interested in it, and maybe they come to some meetings ahead of time and see what it's all about. But we have to get people coming in and serve on these committees.
Yeah, there's a lot of volunteers.
So if we bring it up every week, every meeting, you might, somebody might catch one of the meetings, so.
We had the question that whether we should do a recreation millage too, which not only ties into the money side of it, but the support side of it. Because so many people enjoy, so many of the recreation opportunities are in the township. They're not necessarily in the city or the other townships, so that is important to our public, and it helps support the whole community, the whole county. The other thing I have, and I sent you an email this afternoon, is Representative Cambenzi and Senator McBroom have agreed to come and have an open forum for us, for everybody, not just for the board, for the residents or whoever wants to attend. And they can be here Friday night, March 20th at 6 o'clock, somewhere like between 6 and 8. So we'll be sending out some email blasts. We'll put it on our website. It's on Facebook, I think, or it's going to be. And so I'm hoping as many of the board members as possible can come, any of our committee members, of course, and obviously the residents.
Is it this Friday?
No, Friday the 20th.
20th.
Right, Friday, March 20th, 6 p.m. in the community room. So you'll hear more about that, but I just finalized that today, so I wanted to let you know right away. The last thing is, we did have our organizational board of review meeting today, and we have 3 great volunteers on that committee. They do a lot of good work with those residents who want to come in and talk about their tax bills. That's important. They have concerns. We're kind of the first step. They can always come in and talk to the assessors if they have questions about what their taxes are or whatever information they need on their property. We can direct them or get paperwork for them or whatever they need. So that's available to the residents starting next Monday. It's 3 to 9 on Monday. Residents are welcome to come in and bring your tax papers and see if you have any questions we can answer. I'm just the secretary. There are three Board of Review members, and they're the ones who take care of it. And then the following Thursday, March 12th, from 9 to 3. These are state mandated times and dates, and they will be there from 3 in the afternoon until 9 p.m. We stay right through, and that's Monday, and then Thursday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So you've got 12 good hours of somebody here to come in and answer your questions. We meet in this little conference room, but the doors are open. It's an open, nothing closed door or anything. It's all public information. So that's a lot to share. It's getting busier. The winter was kind of quiet. Committee updates, gentlemen, on the other end. Dave, you want to start with planning, or?
Yeah, Planning Commission, their February 26th meeting, we reviewed a short-term rental special use permit request for public hearing. The subject property is located at 650, I think I've got it right, Holyoke Trail. And the property owner is Eric Eastley. That public hearing was set for March 25th at 7 p.m. And the Planning Commission was working on the marijuana zoning text amendment. And we reviewed a draft of Article 15, that's the principal use permitted in districts. And which led into a discussion and a rather in-depth discussion of Article 16, detailed use regulations. That Article 16 will, Article 15 actually was approved as it is. That'll go to final draft, and then Article 16 will be reviewed at the March 11th commission meeting, the final draft of that. After all that's done, the end of the text amendment process will include a legal review, a public hearing, and a recommendation to the board for approval. The road committee, that was tonight's meeting, that was canceled due to lack of agenda items. We're considering the one thing we needed to talk about tonight, so there wasn't anything to talk about. The Recreation Committee, the next Sustainable Built Environment Initiative, the next town hall meeting is scheduled for April 9th. And I think they're talking about 6 p.m. And then the committee reviewed some updated maps for Schwemmwood Park to direct them to the tunnel and the businesses that are available along US 41 and how to get there. And that is it.
Is that initiative meeting here, Dave?
Yes, in the community room,
In your
sorry.
room? Okay. How about events, Pete?
Randy has it in our, his report, but also the first thing coming up is June 20th, car show at the Westwood Mall parking lot. That's always a great attendance. The next one is August 1st, our community days at our Lions Field. And I'd like to get through summer before we mention November 24th, Christmas tree lighting in Santa. So that really is a ho-ho-ho. So, so just remember the first one, June 20th, the car show at the Westwood Mall.
And how about the Thursday,
Excuse
music
me.
in the mall?
Thursday is Music in the Mall, and that's gonna go another
April and May.
April or May, from 5 to 7. And I believe that they've been having pretty good attendance there, and it's a good thing.
It's the third Thursday?
Next one is the third Thursday of March, correct?
Great, okay. Also in tonight's packet is a couple of committee reports, draft committee reports, the election committee minutes of February 18th and the road committee minutes of February 4th. Policy discussion, consider Peter White, should say Public Library, millage service contract renewal and the millage request. Let's see, we did receive a letter from Director Ingmeyer from the library asking that we renew the millage. That should be in your packet too, with some of the specifics of their budget. We also have a copy in the packet of the contract itself. There's some changes that need to be done with dates, but for the most part, there was no changes in the contract that needed to be done. Everything I circled was the dates themselves. So, thoughts? Yes, Dave?
Could we do a motion to get the
Do whatever we
discussion going?
want. Yep.
I'd make a motion to renew the current contract with the Peter White Public Library for 2 years with an additional extension for 2 years if both parties are in agreement, and authorize the clerk and supervisor to sign the agreement subject to legal review. And I would move that goes on the November ballot.
I'll support that.
Comments, questions? Randy?
Well, just some comments on it for the residents, and of course, the Director Ingmeyer knows this, but for order for us to put this on the ballot in November or August, it doesn't matter what one, we have to have a contract first. Well, this contract is expiring as of December 31 of this year, so we have to have a contract before the millage can be put on the ballot. So, and unlike other millages that can be requested by residents with a referendum, this one cannot be requested by a referendum. The library millage is separate. So the township board's role in this is just to put this on the ballot. That's about it, moving forward. We do have the ability in the contract to name the millage, the length, and what election it's put on. So, and it's pretty much spelled out in the contract that we're requesting a renewal for, what we would like. So, and I'm sure the library would have to review it too with their legal counsel and see if it's amenable to them once we review it ourselves. So, and if Roger has any comment on that, I guess. Make sure your microphone's on.
It is. I have reviewed it, and the only thing in addition to the dates, there are numerous dates, is of course the millage rate, which we'll have to get from the assessor, and I'm not even certain if the 2020 rollback is out yet. But in any event, that will have to be incorporated in, and that's a matter of a half hour of a job once I get the information from the assessor on the rate.
Pete?
I only have one question. In the future, I'd like to have a discussion on penal fines, because we don't have our own department, and we have to contract that out. So even if they had to raise the millage a little bit, but I'd just like to take a look at the possibilities of using some of that money to pay our contract with the sheriff's department, since we don't have our own police department. So just we discussed it before, but I just thought I'd throw it out there.
I was thinking that we don't have any control over that. The penal fines directly go
No, you have to
the
go
sheriff.
through, it's a big lengthy thing, so. But our costs are going up every year, every, contract. It seems like we're raising more and more of it, more hours, and we have to find some way to pay for it, because, so, just an idea.
Okay, Randy? And you were first.
Well, just my comment is I don't think we generate very much money in penal fines anyway, so it's kind of a, I guess any little bit helps, but if it's only a few $1,000s, it's not a big thing.
It's 1 month coverage.
Ann?
When we did our survey, I believe the library was one of the questions that was sent out for roads and everything else. Just wondering what percentage of people off the survey, they're saying 70% on the voters, but that's not representing 100% of the people. That's only representing 70% of the voters.
Of who voted then?
Of who voted. So you can't really use that. I mean, it's shame on them for not getting out and voting, but I find that that's not an accurate number. And I was wondering what the survey had said, for one thing.
I don't think we had the sheriffs in there. I don't remember the
The
library.
library on there too?
It was not in there because it wasn't something that we could control.
Yeah, we can't do anything with that. We're just kind of a pass-through. Unless you're thinking of the
Do you know,
comments that they made
do you
at the
know how
bottom.
many memberships there are in Marquette Township?
I don't have the number off the top of my head. I can get it.
Could we find that out?
I
We had
think,
it one time.
I think when you came to us, I think last year or the year, you had that in your annual report. You usually come out and speak with us, so I think it's there somewhere, Dan. Maybe I can get it for you. Because the last time Andrea was here, with the annual report, she did have that number for us, so.
I don't remember what it was.
But she can get it. If you want to email that to me, I can send it to the board.
Yeah, it's not on any of the,
Oh,
I was
okay.
looking for
I'm
these, just
sorry,
in
I thought it was in there,
because
but
we gave them other options of things to ask for: non-motorized pathways, affordable housing, parks and recreation, improved public transportation, housing types, managing growth, traffic congestion. So that's
with
what I
the-
was thinking it was in there, but it wasn't a question.
with the budget we have to work with, $200,000+ is an awful lot of money to pay for the library. And I just wonder how many people actually use it with the number of people that have access to the internet nowadays. That's one big question I got, and I would like to not see this go for 4 years. I'd rather see it go a shorter period of time so we can get a few of these questions answered. And
Yeah, the motion was for 2 with an automatic renewal unless either party made a
I would
change.
rather not see the automatic.
We've had that, I think.
That's all, it's just a notice that you want to discuss it. It's just a notice, you can give a notice and you can, at the end of the second year, or close to the second year.
But yeah, Andrea can get that information to us. I'll pass it on, or Randy can pass it on to you.
This is something we have to vote on tonight, then, before we can get these questions?
Yeah, the motion's up there already.
Okay.
You seconded?
I did. Dave.
Anything? Oh, thank you.
The 70% discussion always amazes me. 70% is 70%, and 70% represents the residents of this township, and I'm sure less than 70% voted. but it's not because 100% didn't have an opportunity to vote. So 70% is just exactly that, 70%. If somebody showed up and voted and neglected to vote on the library millage, that's their issue. The way it goes on this board is if you don't vote no on something, it's an automatic yes. That's the way it works out there too. It's 70% is 70%, and we always split that hair especially when we're talking about the library, and we start talking about of the 70% that voted for it, only represents a few percent of the people who actually voted, because so many people didn't actually mark their millage question on their ballot, and I just think all of that is irrelevant. It's 70%. If it was something that you were wildly in favor of, like the road millage, we didn't split all those hairs with that. It was 73%. We were just happy to talk about it. So I think it's just 70%, period.
Well, the same people decided on the road and all the other, decisions that we have to make. It's the same people who came to vote decided that also.
This whole thing is the public's opportunity to weigh in on issues that the board is facing, and the library millage is certainly one of those issues that they get to decide where their money is spent. And if they choose to weigh in, great. If they choose not to weigh in, that's their choice. I hate to say it so crudely, but if you don't want to vote, then you deserve what you get.
You're kind of
That's why I'm
crude.
trying to encourage everybody to get out and be informed and know what they're supporting or not. We all need to get out, and that's, a lot of people died.
Especially with the absentee ballot, you don't even need a reason for an absentee ballot anymore. So you don't even have to leave your house. All you have to do is check a box. So
Mail it in.
there's hardly very many excuses not to vote.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of voting, are we ready to vote?
I'll request a roll call vote, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Trustee Wiegand?
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Everson?
I'd like to find out the answer, or some questions, so I'm just going to say no for now.
Okay.
Don't pass.
It's a no.
No.
Can't pass.
Trustee Marks?
No.
And Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Durant?
Yes.
That motion carries 5-2.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess I'll speak from the clerk side of things. I guess I'll get together with Roger and we'll look at this document and adjust it to where it needs to be. And then we will, I guess, forward it to the library, and then they will send it back to us if, we'll, like before. And then I think this will still come before the board in its final version, because this is just an example. We won't probably vote on it again because we've already approved it. And then moving forward, sometime probably in June or early July, I will have the millage question to go before the board that will be placed on the November ballot then.
The actual language.
The actual language that I will get from Attorney Zappa and our assessor.
Do you have an addendum, Roger, or are you okay?
What's that?
Do you have an addendum, anything to add?
Nothing, no, I basically have the revisions made on the contract. So all I need is the millage number.
So one more comment. So the contract will be for 2 years, as with the old one, with an automatic extension of another 2 years if either party does not have an issue, basically. So actually, our last contract, Ann, was for 2 years, and in 2018, when it came through, no party mentioned any problems, so it just extended for another 2 years till 2020. So that's going to be the way we're going to do this one. So it does not lock the board into a long, four-year contract or the library if something changes. So, so we'll go 2 years, and then if there's no problems, another 2 years, so.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yep, thanks for coming. Okay, consider 2020 local roads maintenance recommendation. We have An action item?
You do. You have a recommendation in your packet. The Roads Committee considered the bid specs that came back from UP engineers and architects and made a recommendation to me. I'm passing that along to the board. The issue that we have is, as you'll recall, we had some serious concerns with regard to the status of what our future millage revenues may be as a result of the dark stores issues that were continuing and are still continuing to this date, basically with regard to the roads project. And as a result, our revenue stream is not sufficient coming in to cover what the anticipated expenses are. So the general fund has been doing supplemental contributions to the fund to cover the long-term bond and interest coverages costs. So the Roads Committee had three different options that they had proposed to stay within the budgeted amount. And as I reviewed those, the will of the people, basically, as was mentioned previously by one of the speakers, is what we're working with. So what I'm recommending is that we take the middle approach that the Road Committee had suggested, do an additional transfer from the general fund to the Township Improvements, Road Improvements Fund to cover all of the maintenance items that were required for this year, but doing away with the chip seal plus portion of the project. And that's my recommendation to the board.
Randy?
I make a motion that the board transfer an additional $13,928 from the general fund to the Township Improvements Fund, eliminate the chip seal plus option from the Farner proposal, and address all remaining maintenance actions of the Farner proposal for the total bid award of $66,928.
Support.
Also, the Roads Chair, I think, may want to make some comments on it.
I was going to ask him. Go ahead.
No, he doesn't really. The bottom line on it was is if we took that other $10,000 out of there, we would end up not doing any crack seal in Oakwood subdivision, which all it does is it just doubles the cost for the next year. So it's pay now or pay later. It just seems to be better to take the money out now so we can keep the cost down overall.
So the bottom line is rather than lose a year's worth of maintenance, we'll cover it out of the general fund.
Any other questions or issues? Oh, we've got a motion, don't we? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Consider Fire and Rescue Department Scott Air Pack ×3 proposals, their form of scuba gears, self-contained breathing apparatus, and related equipment.
As you will recall, last year, the fire department submitted an federal AIDS to Firefighter grant proposal for equipment replacement. They were awarded that grant in September. The funds became available this January. So we went out on bids for the self-contained breathing apparatus replacement. These are replacing units that I believe are about 12 years old that are reaching their life expectancy currently, and they are used very regularly by our firefighters on not only fire but also rescue type operations. So we did go out for bids. We received two responsive proposals. One, however, did not include the compressor that we had specified. So we are recommending that the Pomasol award the Pomasol proposal be accepted for the 15 Scott Air Packs, the breathing air compressor, and the 6-cylinder Cascade charging system. From the grant funds, we do not have those in hand. This is a reimbursing grant. We will submit the proposal, the approved proposal, if the board acts in that manner this evening, to the Aid to Firefighters grant. They will forward the funds and we'll go forward. It's a pass-through.
Randy?
I move to recommend proposed award of Pomasol fire equipment for 15 complete Scott Air Packs and breathing air compressor and 6-cylinder Cascade filling systems.
Support.
Motion and support. Dave?
I had a question, are there matching funds associated with that grant, or is the grant going to cover it?
It's a pure grant.
Okay.
There are no matching funds required.
All right.
John?
No.
Oh, okay. Your light was on. Okay. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I just noticed our numbering was off, Randy.
It is.
That's okay. Consider Nelson Tank maintenance proposal.
I'm glad John didn't leave.
There are two proposals on the agenda for your consideration. One didn't require that it come to you based on our policies, but I figured if one's coming, both should come to you so you know the whole story. We have in the budget for this year, the interior and exterior painting of the Northwoods tank. That was last inspected in 2015, and that's when the painting was scheduled for this year, basically. In communicating with NTEC, our tank consultant, they recommended doing a robotic inspection of the tank before putting the bid specs together for the painting to make sure there hasn't been any significant degradation of the interior of the tank since the last inspection 5 years ago. And I think that's a really good idea, primarily to minimize the potential for change orders during construction, which is any excessive pitting, that kind of thing, or unseen structural type issues that you want to get in your bid specs so that you don't have to pay for it as a change order. So we're recommending continuing down the current road of using NTEC as our tank consultant, and to approve the proposal for the robotic inspection and then the engineering services that will get us through construction and final inspection of the paint job.
But if they find something, there could be additional costs.
That would be in the construction cost, which is in the budget. So if they anticipate a significant change to our construction budget as a result of the robotic inspection, then we would likely be having a different discussion when it comes to bidding the project out. And that would likely mean either delaying the project to get the adequate funds next year, or beefing up the budget for this year to get the project done on schedules. And, you know, some of their recommendations might suggest that you can't wait. So I think it's prudent to do that additional inspection. The robotic inspection is the cheapest because you don't have to drain the tank. And it will give you a pretty good idea on whether or not anything significant has changed in 5 years.
So the construction budget is kind of, has a contingency in there in case, so.
I
if they
hope
don't
so.
find anything.
The number that's in the budget came straight from the report from 5 years ago, what they told us to budget for 2020. You know, inflation can always play a factor in that, contractor availability, there's a number of factors, but I think the biggest thing is knowing before you bid the project what the work needs to be so that you're getting apples to apples bids, and nothing hidden because a contractor knows something you don't.
And the only thing really that would happen would be something unanticipated that they saw inside the tank, and that would come back to you for action.
Dave?
A number of questions, and it's mostly because I don't understand it. I understand the 3850, what that's for. The 12280, that is for engineering costs, oversight, and that type of stuff, right?
Correct. So they would write the bid specs, bid the project, recommend award, inspect the work upon completion, and make sure that before we put that tank back online, that it meets proper standards for a new paint job.
Okay, I'm just going to keep asking my questions. They got to drain the tank when they do the repair, correct?
Correct.
How long is it going to be out of service?
I want to say it's usually about 2 weeks, somewhere in that range.
Okay, when they drain the tank, do they not, when they're getting it ready to paint the interior and the exterior, do they not do an inspection on it?
They do, but we won't drain the tank until the contractor is ready to start and the bids have already been received.
Okay. But they will do an inspection on it.
Yes,
And if I read the ROV inspection report, it was an estimate based on a sampling of small areas, so they may not be correct. I'm just wondering, and they do that with the tank full, correct?
correct.
I'm just wondering why we want to spend money for that inspection, why we just don't wait until we drain the tank and do the inspection and then,
So the issue there is, if you do find something, you're still dealing with a change order, and it's not a bid price. So change order prices, you don't have as much control over because now you're,
the cost for those additional items are in their, the hourly costs or whatever it is are in their bid specs, right?
well,
Additional items?
Nelson doesn't do the painting,
I know that.
but they would be doing the inspection. And if something is discovered once the tank is drained, we could still have change orders that didn't come up during the robotic inspection. The robotic inspection is intended to take a reasonable effort at eliminating as many of those change orders as possible.
I guess my question is, even after we do the robotic inspection, and we now determine that they didn't find anything that needed any additional attention, we drain the tank, they start preparing it, and now it's just as likely as not that they're gonna find some other problems that need to be addressed, hence the change order, because by their own description and their robotic inspection, they're not gonna get everything.
Right. Quite honestly, you won't get everything with a drain tank inspection either, just
Well, you're
because
gonna get it when they're cleaning it up and getting ready to paint, correct?
as soon as they start sandblasting, you'll find out if more stuff's coming off the wall than just
Right.
old paint.
So I guess I'm questioning the whole 3850. I know that's not a lot of money, but it just seems to be a step that I'm just wondering why we need it there.
We could take the risk. I can't guarantee you what that would result in. I think it's a good precautionary measure.
Worst case scenario, they drain the tank and find out we gotta cut a panel out and re-weld a new one in, but you're gonna have to do that anyway, right?
Yes, but it would be based on competitive prices as opposed to a contractor's change order price.
Okay.
That's all.
Devil's advocate.
I appreciate it. It makes sense to have the conversation now because once you go down that road, it's really hard to turn back.
I just wonder that we're, put a little thought into the thing as opposed to NTEC saying it's a really good idea because they happen to have a ROV sitting around that they'd really like to use.
I just think 5 years could cause a lot of issues. I would even recommend it stronger if the last inspection was, say, in 2010, and we're sitting at 2015, and we just went through the winter of 2014, which was the harshest winter that I remember, even though there was another one in my lifetime. I don't know. My recommendation is to do the inspection to avoid potentially costly or minimize potentially costly change orders during the painting.
Now that I got your explanation, I would tend to agree with you, but it's going to be interesting to see what the ROV inspection turned up versus what was turned up by the crew that was preparing it.
I agree. Yeah.
Be interesting to see what that is.
I've been in this field for over 20 years, and I've seen one tank painted in that time. And that was actually through a preventive maintenance contract, so the contractor that had the preventive maintenance contract hired the painter. I wouldn't recommend we do that. I think we have a better way of doing things here. So, anyway.
Okay. Dan, I think you were next.
Can the robotic inspection work in our favor? Could they look at that and then realize, well, the damage isn't what they anticipated it would be, so therefore it's not going to cost as much to do the painting?
Most likely not, because the painting effort will be the entire tank regardless. It's a matter of if there's additional degradation of the tank that didn't show up 5 years ago that requires more significant repairs, whether it's filling in pits, cutting out a plate of the structure, whatever it may be.
How long can you anticipate this new painting then lasts?
Oh, I should have known that.
5 years.
It's more than 5. I want to say it's 10 to 20, but I'll get you that answer.
This board didn't do a painting, but we've gone through that already, so this is 12 years for some of us. So it's been in that time.
Since one has been done?
We have 3 tanks, so they've rotated
that's
basically, and over my tenure, they've been done, 2 tanks have been done, so it's about every 15 years.
Ernie, I think you were next.
Couple of questions. When you say you're draining the tank, where are you going to get the additional, how are you going to work with making sure you have water in the area, in the Northwoods area?
We're working on the SOP for that as we speak. It's actually already written. We're just making sure that it's up to date. With Northwoods, I think we have to pump from Cox to do that.
I think the other question is, the figures you have here, you indicated that it came from prior years. They give you some idea what it would cost now. No, the figure they gave you back then, did they give you some accelerated figures to put into this one, or are they just?
In the report that was, the inspection report that was completed in 2015, it said to paint in 2020, and they estimated the cost to be $80,000. That's what's in the budget. I think it's 80 or 88, something like that.
Yeah, they did plug in some estimated inflation figures when they calculated that.
Pete, I think you're next.
How long can that tank be down, John?
I would say as long as the rest of our system is functioning properly, indefinitely. It's not ideal though, because now you're sending water into a pressure district that's normally not there. You're changing the equilibrium. The pressures will change. The water quality will be different because the well water and the water coming from the treatment plant are different sources, so, and they're treated differently. I don't think there's any harm in doing that as long as we need to keep the tank down.
Well, I just want people to listen to this, and, oh, that shut the tank down, I just wanted to ask a question so it's out there. The second question is, what's our past history on repairs and that, the way we do it?
That I couldn't tell you. I'm not familiar with repair history other than adding some artificial anodes, I guess is what they are. I'm not sure what other changes we've done to the tank, so that tank over the years.
I think the pre-inspection would be good, because if you see something, you can plan on it, so when you shut it down, you can get at it. Otherwise, when you shut it down, then you have to go through the bidding process and all the other things, so might be a good thing to keep doing.
Yeah, well, we definitely don't want to drain the tank until we know the contractor is mobilizing.
Right.
It wouldn't take more than a couple of days. You let a lot of that drain down naturally, and some of it you end up having to waste just because at some point you have to turn the pumps on at Cox. And really what you're doing is having pumps create the pressure that normally is created by gravity from elevation. So,
John?
Move to concur with the recommendation of the Superintendent of Public Works and approve the ROV inspection and engineering services proposed from NTEC in the amount of $3,850 and $12,280 respectively, and to authorize the Superintendent of Public Works to sign on behalf of the township.
Support.
Motion and support. And Dave?
Yeah, just one last question. From the last discussion we had, not with you, but before with this, it seems to me the only thing you could do with the Cox district was refill the tank and the well field pressurize the system? Or is it the other way around?
I think it's the other way around. I've had this conversation a couple of times with Lenny, and I'm fairly certain he said we pressurized the Northwoods district with the Cox booster station.
Randy?
Yeah, just a couple of clarifying points. You know, with the ROV inspection, it's not just the interior of the tank that it's looking at, but it looks at the cathodic protection and things such as that John had mentioned inside the tank that can be built into the specs if it needs to be addressed prior to draining the tank and having somebody there and then having to try and get it in. It's always better to have it in the specs to begin with and not have to deal with it as a change order in the past or in the future. This is where the benefit of having a joint water system comes in, not just for us, but for the city of Marquette as well. The Cox tank is filled from the Lincoln tank, basically, and then we pump it back to the city. Basically, we use a different valve in this situation to pump it from the Cox tank to the Northwoods tank to pressurize the system. So we use the Cox pumps to pressurize it that otherwise would have been pressurized by this tank that's out of service. And the third point that I wanted to make is that when we're talking about draining the tank, we don't just open the tank and let it run on the ground. It's a natural drawdown. The use of it takes it down to its minimum level, and then ultimately we'll have to drain some out of it, but a minimal amount. So it's not an impact. The residents in the affected district, probably the only thing they'll notice is maybe a slight difference in the taste of the water because it's coming from the Lincoln tank through Cox. City of Marquette does additional treatment because it's surface water, so it tastes a little bit different.
The water's pumped all the way back to Lincoln Avenue, correct?
Correct.
It's soft water versus hard water.
Right. It's a difference. But
Dave?
it's treated differently.
One last question. The last time it was inspected was 5 years ago?
2015, correct.
Was that done with an ROV, or did we drain the tank and do that
The
inspection?
tank was drained.
Okay.
Right.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. You're earning your money
Thank you.
tonight.
I'm not cheap.
Next up is
We're draining your tank.
consider management replacement search. There's no action form. This is an update from the manager.
It is.
That's what the agenda says. Felt you.
Okay, well, as you all know, the candidate that you were speaking with ultimately ended up not being available for other reasons about a week ago. So in the meantime, Supervisor Durant and I have had several conversations, and I've gone forward on your behalf, basically, and initiated an additional additional actions. It's been listed with the MTA, it's been listed with the MML, and it is up on both of their websites as of today. MML put it up just this afternoon, MTA put it up on Monday, yesterday. I have reached out and talked to both of them in terms of their ability and capacity to do search and direct recruitment services for us. Both come with a cost. I've talked with a consultant that was recommended, and you've seen that proposal, I think, at your, did we send that out to everybody last week? We did send that out last week, $12,500, take 4 months. So we're in the process, basically. I've reached out to several regional managers that I'm aware of with the retirement system that I'm with to canvass the townships and communities that they work with. And I sent out to a manager's superintendent and supervisors group that I belong to. I sent the information out to them as well to see if we can get some recommendations. So that's basically where we're at this point. Nothing has come back yet. It's only been since, what was it, Friday? Friday, 4:30 Friday afternoon. So that's where we are. We've gotten the information out to people again, and it's basically on your plate to decide what you want to do with it in terms of what kind of a process do you want to follow? Do you want to keep going in this direction until your next meeting, or what would you like to do?
The two bids we got, were there any dates on those? I don't remember,
For searches?
yeah, if they had, their quote had a certain time limit. Like,
No.
sometimes it'll say.
No, this
only
was.
90 days or
No,
60.
these were not formal quotes, they were, estimated proposals, and they ranged from 12,500 to a little over 27,000, depending on who it was.
So nothing
But
was-
all of them were about a 4-month time frame.
Okay. Dave, I think you.
So if I understand what you're saying, if we started today, we got 4 months from having somebody in position.
The earliest was middle of June projection, the latest was the end of June. If you have an outside party do it.
Just a couple more comments. This is the direction we headed down initially. And then we changed our mind and decided to go and do it ourselves. And
Correct.
here we are right back to looking 4 months away again. I would hope we could wrap this up sometime in the near future. I personally think this whole interview process has been an embarrassment to this board up to date.
I remember somebody saying, why are we going so fast on this? And I said, because we don't know if this is gonna work and we may have to start all over again.
We have gone 2 different directions. We put our notices out in the paper, and we got everybody in here to do the interviews, and then it was, we got time, let's wait 6 weeks to give this guy time to show up. And then we had to hurry up and make a decision so we could give him time to make a decision. And then bottom line, nothing came out of this. And I just, to date, we look like a board that really doesn't know what they're doing right now.
I think we followed the steps just that we had planned, and a lot of that was out of our control. I don't think it reflects on us at all.
I think most of it was within our control, and I would tend to disagree with you.
Okay, that's all right. Pete?
Well, I don't agree with you, Dave, on that, but that's all right. I like the process that we go out and hire somebody to go do it. Our neighboring cities and townships have done it, and they've come out very good. Ishmael seems to do a good job with their manager, the new manager. Nagani has it. Escanaba has done it, and I think that's a good process. To
So
keep us out of it until they come back to us with some candidates.
So when the time comes, or next week, or today, or whatever, you're thinking we should just go out and hire a firm right now?
I think, I believe that. And then also, I said we have to talk to Randy and just see what his timeframes are, and, you know.
He did say last meeting that maybe through the end of June, he might have a.
Yeah,
bid.
but he's not cheap.
No, that was John that said that.
Well, I know he's got plans in the future, so, you know, I think he should be compensated for if we extend his,
Well,
I
he
think.
get his paycheck, just like everybody.
Yeah. It could be done tomorrow, too.
So do you want him to stop? Are you suggesting then?
No,
he
I
stop?
think if they go down that road, see what they come back with, and then, you know,
So do you want to give him the 2 weeks till our next meeting and see?
whatever it takes to get.
We should have a
that done.
proposal.
If I can come up. Yeah, and basically the approach I'm taking is it's a direct contact headhunt, basically, is the approach that I would take at this point, which is what we've commenced at this point. And you give it till your next meeting to see if it bears any fruit, and if not, you've only lost 2 weeks out of a 4-month process.
Ernie?
So what we're saying, we have 2 entities that we're working with right now. And by the next meeting, we have to make a decision to go full blast with one of them, or we'll continue to go with 2, because if we go with 2, you're gonna pay for 2 and that too. So
Oh, yeah, you would not use 2, you would utilize 1. Yeah, and, you know, and my recommendation would be the same as it was in, you know, right at the beginning of this process. If you want to use an outside source, use Michigan Municipal League. They are by far the most active in the state of Michigan. There are other private ones out there, but they already have a pool of candidates to draw from. They do these all the time, all around the state.
But they will be doing something at this point in time for us.
I am, not them. It's posted on their website, online. It's listed online for both Michigan Municipal League and Michigan Township Association, so all of their members will be seeing it on their website. But I am doing direct contacts as well around the state with contacts that I have.
So we don't have an agreement with anybody right now?
No, well, you're not committed to anyone outside of your own staff
He's
at
just
this
saying
point.
that he's contacted all these individually, personally. either emails or
So what
phone.
I'm hearing is that by the next meeting, we have to make a decision one way or another.
I would certainly recommend that you don't go beyond your next meeting. Time is burning.
John?
Yeah.
John, go
Well,
ahead.
I think I was just agreeing with what Ernie was saying. We want to go ahead, as we're doing it, for another week until we hear from our manager. And then we'll know which direction to take. I think that's fair. Another week isn't going to hurt it.
No.
Okay. Well, it'll be on the next agenda then
Yeah.
to make some kind of a decision.
And if it looks like it's not bearing fruit, then I'll have them give you a formal proposal for your next meeting.
Sound good to everybody? Dan?
I just wanted to say too, I disagree with Dave. We tried it, it didn't work. At that time, we saved the township a bunch of money. We may have to spend it. It's one of those things, it's a learning experience.
And in answer to the other question, I've already indicated to Supervisor Durant that if you need me to hang around for another month through the end of June, I'm willing to do that.
Oh, God.
I know, it's bad, I know.
Thank you.
Painful, I know.
Yeah, the wives always have something to say about that. Okay, I'd like to, for the next one is to schedule a strategic planning session. Trustee Dave was so nice about working on our strategic plan and updating it and giving us new copies, and he got it down to 2 pages. Well, not even a page, like 6 items, I think it is, for us to discuss. Basically, we're talking about township facility space, storage space, the community day programs, utilizing the community room, and security, handicap, accessibility through the building. We've got lots of doors here, and then sometimes that's difficult for people who are a little bit challenged, whether it's a cane or a wheelchair or whatever it is. Look at that one. We're talking about township-owned property on 492, which includes what I call the Starbucks Road, that undeveloped road access, driveway actually, behind there. The next item is communication with our wet residents. I was looking at website, which involves the website, try to figure out how to increase our base of volunteers and continue to communicate with our residents. And roads was next, talking about non-motorized along the key roadways and a few of the roads that need to be addressed with that. Fair Avenue, Commerce Drive, 492, and Brookton Road. And then the question, as I mentioned before, came up about a recreation millage, if we want to talk about that. So as it stands right now, that's kind of our draft strategic direction. And if we can have a work session to kind of make this one, like I said, include the public, have some work sessions, have some open houses, talk about it. If, you know, some of you were with us the last time we did this. We had boards up and an opportunity for them to give their opinion on what they think is important. So, I don't know if anybody's, I do have board of review twice next week.
That's Monday and Thursday for your board of review?
Pardon?
Monday and Thursday is your board?
Monday and Thursday, yep. So after that, I'm kind of good. We've got the county, our
The election
reps
next
coming in
Tuesday.
Wednesday.
Election next Tuesday.
Okay. So what's your pleasure? You want to wait till the following week?
Which week is the following week? Week of the 9th, the week of the 10th,
The 16th?
16th?
The 9th is okay for me, except Monday and Thursday, and then Randy, you'd be tied up Tuesday.
I don't want nothing next week. That's
Nothing
election.
the
That's
week
election
following.
week. That's rough for me.
Okay, all right, that's fine. So the week of the 16th?
Yeah,
Anybody have any preferences on that?
just any time after 1.
Wednesday I can't.
Okay. Unless you want to try to do it before a board meeting?
Monday or Tuesday work for me.
Oh, they got a committee meeting.
They canceled it tonight, but
It's Monday, Dave.
We're
16th?
working on a week of the 16th, Monday or Tuesday, either one, if you're doing the 1 to 3 mark.
After that, I'll be gone to Green Bay.
Tuesday is fine, the
Get a
17th,
huff in the doctor.
from 1 to 3.
When?
1 o'clock on Tuesday.
I mean, the same day.
Monday I'm open.
St. Patrick's Day.
Day?
Big
Well, Pete's got a
snowstorm.
doctor's appointment on Tuesday, how about Monday?
Monday's fine.
Monday the 16th?
Monday, the 16th, from 1 to 3 work?
Okay.
1 to 3?
Yep.
So I'll move to schedule a work session Monday, the 16th of March, from 1 to 3, purpose of,
1 to 3?
1
yeah,
to 3.
well, 1 o'clock, but hopefully it doesn't last till 3, but,
Yeah, last week was just an hour, I think.
yeah, at 1 o'clock for the purpose of strategic planning. That's a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Yeah, I'll post that tomorrow or the next day.
1 o'clock, Monday, 3/16. All right, we're down to public comment. Anybody want to share anything?
I just wanted to say thank you to the Township Board for continued support of the library and consideration of library services for Township residents. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any announcements anybody wants to share?
Yes, Lynn. Okay, election next week. Presidential primary. Township Hall will be open this Saturday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. for anyone that needs to register to vote, because you can do that now. Give out or take in absentee ballots. So that so we'll have someone in the office here from 8 to 4 this Saturday. With the candidates dropping out of the election, anyone that has filed an absentee ballot that would like to change or spoil their ballot and redo it has until 4 o'clock on Monday to come into the township office. Don't do it by mail. Come to the township office before Monday at 4 o'clock, and we can spoil your absentee ballot, and we can reissue another one and get it corrected.
Well, what if somebody can't get to the office? Are they just kind of out of luck?
Well, we're kind of crunched with time, and I can't help that. So they have a week from today to get, or they have till next Monday at 4 o'clock. That's the best I can do.
So what if we have someone can somebody pick up their ballot? How does that work? Is that possible at all?
Yeah, they can
Drop it off?
yeah, they can pick it up, or, see, it's for the ones that have come in already,
Right.
for the most part,
But
but
the
it,
replacement,
yeah, they have to come in and we have to spoil it, and then we'll issue them a replacement.
so a husband could come in for a wife or something?
I don't think so.
No,
Can't do that, okay.
can't do that. It has to be the person.
Yeah, because they have to sign for it.
No, for the public.
Randy, you can pick up an absentee ballot from 8 to 4 on Saturday?
Correct. As long as
You've
you
got until the close of the polls on Tuesday to drop it off?
get it in, to drop it in the mailbox.
Okay.
If it's in after 8 o'clock on Tuesday, I can't help that. Just make sure you get it in one of the mailboxes or bring it even to the polling place, because we'll take it and we'll make sure it gets to the right place. Because I do have an absentee counting board, so we will not be processing the absentee ballots in the precinct. So they'll have a separate precinct that does that. But if you get it to us by 8 o'clock Tuesday, we'll make sure it's counted.
Let's make sure everybody understands what we're saying. If they have a ballot, you go through it
Okay,
again, just to
so
be
if
clear.
you've already mailed your ballot back and it's turned in already, and your candidate of choice is no longer running, and you want to change it, come back to the office and spoil your absentee ballot. You have until 4 o'clock on Monday to do that, and we can reissue you another ballot, and you can change your selection based on, who's left, I guess.
But the person themselves has to do that.
Yeah, the person that the ballot is responsible for has to come back and do that. So a husband can't come in for the wife and say, my wife wants a new ballot. That can't happen.
Good, just so everybody's clear.
And actually, the city of Marquette talked about it on the TV6 News today, so there is some.
It's in the mining journal
And
as
it's in
well.
the mining journal, yes.
Wait until after today, see who else is still in the running.
And I've had folks do that before, although it's kind of impossible on election day to come in and change your ballot, especially in an absentee. You just can't do it because we've processed it already.
Right.
Any other announcements? Okay, managers report.
Well, you do have a printed report in your packet. Trustee LaRue has already mentioned a couple of them. Community Events Committee has the schedule for the year set. The next event is Music on the Mall, which would be Thursday, the 19th of March is the next one. And then the third Thursday of April and the third Thursday of May will be the final two. 5 o'clock in the Westwood Mall, and it's a combination farmers market, vendors, things such as that inside the mall to give folks the opportunity to keep going until the outside farmers market starts up again at the Commons in the city of Marquette. Car Show and Cruise is on Saturday, June 20th. Community Day at Lions Field, August 1st. And if you want to look way ahead, Christmas tree lighting is on Tuesday, November 24th, as Trustee LaRue had mentioned. Ice rink is closed. We just cannot seem to keep ice on it with the sun. It's forecast to be in the almost 50 again this weekend, starting on Friday, so it's kind of a lost cause. And we're usually about this time of the year starting to wind it down anyway. It's beginning of the spring. We talked at the last board meeting about the ambulance and the potential repair of the ambulance. It turned out to be not the head gasket. So we were able to get it repaired. It was the EGR valve that went bad. Unfortunately, when it went bad, it also overspun the turbo, so we had to replace the turbocharger on it, but we were successful in finding a reconditioned turbo. So we basically got out of that repair for just over $3,200, which was significantly less than we were anticipating. Along the same lines, Richmond Township has decided that they are not going to be in the rescue business any longer, and their ambulance may be available. We have talked with the supervisor and also with the chief, and we are awaiting an action of their township board on the 12th to determine, as it sits right now, their last action was to go out for bids on it, strictly bids. In talking with the supervisor and the chief, they are now going to request an opportunity with their board on the 12th to discuss with us directly potential acquisition of that ambulance as our second. So that's where we stand at this point.
Any questions for the manager? Whoever raised their hand first.
Just a comment, after probably the 28th of February, the sun angle is getting so high that natural ice is kind of, unless you don't have a cover on it, it's kind of impossible to keep because you can feel that heat in the sun now. You're not going to keep ice past end of February.
Particularly bad on the north end of the rink.
Okay.
That event at the mall, is that the entertainment that starts at 5, or does the?
The whole thing starts at 5. The first, I believe, the first of the 3 entertainers starts right at 5 o'clock, and I think another one starts at 6, and the last one starts at 7.
What about the crafts? Yeah?
The crafts are already starting at 5 o'clock. The vendors are there for 5.
Okay.
Okay, manager, the motions?
Okay, the first motion was to approve the consent agenda as presented. Second motion was to approve the regular agenda as presented. The third motion was to approve the renewal of the Peter White Public Library service contract, and that was 5-2, it passed. Fourth motion was to approve the 2020 local roads maintenance recommendation, and that was approved. And the fifth motion was to approve the Fire Rescue Department Scott Air Pack proposals, and that was approved. Sixth motion was to approve the Nelson Tank Maintenance proposal, and that was approved. And the seventh motion was to schedule a strategic planning session on Monday, the 16th of March, 2020, at 1 PM for strategic planning.
Excellent. And as of right now, we just have the manager search update then for the next agenda on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. Any board member comment? Andy?
Very quick, I did over the past weekend manage to get all the planning commission meetings uploaded into our YouTube site, so there's no video, but the audio is there, so anyone that wishes to listen to our planning commission meetings, as of January, the first January meeting, they are there now, so I got that updated. I got the link from the planner, so I'll be doing that, fairly shortly after the meetings, or I'll get that updated.
Thank you, that's excellent. I hope the public pays attention to those meetings, that would be awesome. And any potential candidates who would like to be a commissioner besides. Okay, I need another motion then for the closed session.
I'll make a motion, we go into closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268 subsection H, which is to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute, but no, the board is not permitted to go into closed session to discuss an attorney's oral opinion as opposed to a written legal memo. And that's closed session regarding Lost Creek.
Support.
Roll call vote is Clerk Rattari is yes, Treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand. Trustee Everson.
Yes.
Trustee Marks.
Yes.
Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
We are in closed session at
8:22.
8:22 PM.